AP 120, Chapter 12, Topics, Leukocytes. Leukocytes is the official name for white blood cells, and white blood cells are important because they help defend us against disease and infection. And white blood cells not only function in the blood, but they also leave the bloodstream to fight infection in our tissues. And the lifespan of white blood cells can vary quite dramatically from only 12 hours to years and even decades. So, white blood cells, leukocytes, are of course produced in the red bone marrow by the exact same stem cells as we talked before, the hematopoietic stem cells. And they lead to all the different kinds of white blood cells that you will find in the bloodstream. And all of these white blood cells can be broken down into two groups, the granular leukocytes and the agranular leukocytes. So the granular leukocytes are called granular leukocytes because they have these large, easy to see granules in their cytoplasm when you look at them under a light microscope. The agranular leukocytes do not have as obvious granules in the cytoplasm. It's also worth noting that the white blood cells and these blood samples are stained. That's why they have so much color in the white blood cells. It's because, again, they have been stained with dye. And we're only going to be talking about the leukocytes found in the blood. And this includes the eosinophil, basophil, and neutrophil, which are the three granular leukocytes, and then the lymphocyte and monocyte, which are the two agranular leukocytes. Now, basophils are larger than red blood cells. They have a large number of round, dark purple granules, so many, in fact, that they obscure the nucleus, so you can't actually see the nucleus itself. Basophils have two big important functions. One is they release histamine. Histamine is important for intensifying inflammation, and in fighting infections, inflammation can be helpful for a short period of time. Unfortunately, for people with allergies, the basophils can also release histamine to cause the symptoms of allergies. The other thing that basophils can do is release the compound heparin, and heparin helps to inhibit blood clotting, which actually can help with the causing inflammation. Then we have eosinophils. Eosinophils, again, are bigger than the red blood cells. Their nucleuses have 2 to 3 lobes connected by little strands, and they also have a large number of red-orange granules throughout their cytoplasm. The functions of eosinophils, well, they can release enzymes to counter inflammation, so they are able to turn off, ramp down inflammation, which again is useful because inflammation is only helpful for a short period of time. And this also includes helping to ramp down the side effects of allergies. Another important function of eosinophils is to destroy parasitic infections. Parasitic infections are large pathogens such as worms. Parasitic worms would fall under this category, and so the eosinophils can attack them and destroy them through the process of phagocytosis. Neutrophils. Neutrophils are having a rather light purple sort of cytoplasm with granules distributed throughout. They have somewhere between 2 and 5 lobes in their nucleus, and they are also larger than the red blood cells. Now, neutrophils are active in phagocytosis, so they go around engulfing bacteria and other pathogens. They engulf cell debris, dead matter, and then what they engulf gets destroyed via the function of lysosomes. So the bacteria, etc., that's brought into the neutrophil gets destroyed by the enzymes in the lysosomes. And neutrophils function in both the bloodstream and in the tissues of the body. So it's looking for pathogens both in the bloodstream and in the tissues of the body. And neutrophils are the most common kind of leukocyte. So over half of the leukocytes are neutrophils. Lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are about the same size as red blood cells or bigger. They can be bigger than red blood cells, so the same size or bigger. They have a huge nucleus that fills up most of their cell, although you can see a little bit of the cytoplasm, which is a sort of sky blue color. Lymphocytes actually come in different kinds. There are different categories of lymphocytes. However, under the light microscope, we cannot distinguish between them, so we group them all together. But many of them are involved in the specific immune response. So this is the response to a very specific infection. So you get infected with the influenza virus, then lymphocytes that specifically target influenza virus are the ones that would be activated. And this would include the B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes can, when active, become plasma cells, and the plasma cells produce antibodies that would bind to the influenza virus. And then we have helper T lymphocytes. Helper T lymphocytes are important because they stimulate the specific immune response. So it's the helper T lymphocytes that turn on the B lymphocytes and the cytotoxic T lymphocytes. And then the cytotoxic T lymphocytes, they go around and destroy our own body cells that are infected with the pathogen. So any of our cells lining the respiratory tract that are infected with influenza virus would then be destroyed by this kind of cytotoxic T lymphocytes. Monocytes. Monocytes are larger than red blood cells. They have a large nucleus that's often horseshoe-shaped or sort of kidney-shaped, and they have some sky blue grayish cytoplasm. Monocytes are inactive in the bloodstream. They are only active when they enter the tissues, and when monocytes enter the tissues, they become macrophages. So macrophages are the active form of monocytes. Macrophages are found in the tissues, and they engage in general phagocytosis. So they will phagocytize, they will engulf microbes, other pathogens, cell debris, and so on. And of course, they have lots of lysosomes that would then help to destroy the pathogens that they have engulfed. So again, monocytes are inactive. They only become active in tissues where they are known as macrophages. So here are the 5 different kinds of white blood cells that we can see using a light microscope. Now, what would happen if you needed more of a specific type of white blood cell? So say you get infected with tapeworms. What's going to happen to the levels of eosinophil? Well, as you would expect, the levels of eosinophil would go up. So leukocytosis, increased number of leukocytes. When their function is called upon, more of them will be produced so that more are present and ready in the blood to act. And this is why when you have your blood checked out after, say, a physical, they take their blood sample, one of the things they do is a differential white blood cell count, where they actually use a computer to count the amount of the different kinds of leukocytes that are in your blood. And then if certain leukocytes have elevated levels, that can give them a clue as to what might be wrong, if anything. So for instance, here is the differential white blood cell count that I've had done for my past few years of physicals. And as you can see, up here is baso, so this is the basophil count, well within normal. Eosinophil had a slight peak once, but overall well within normal. Lymphocyte count within normal. Monocyte count within normal, and neutrophil count well within normal. So the next time you get this information after a physical, after they've done some blood work, you will know actually what they're talking about, what the baso and eso and lymphocyte things are. All right, leukopenia. Leukopenia is when you have 2 few white blood cells, not enough white blood cells to protect your body. This will then make you vulnerable to infection. This can even include benign organisms. So there are some bacteria, for instance, that live on and in us that are normally benign, normally do not cause any problems at all. But if your level of white blood cells drops too low, then they can actually become pathogenic and cause health conditions. So there are a variety of things that can cause leukopenia, including, say, AIDS, severe stage of infection with the HIV. Leukemia is red bone marrow cancer. When someone has leukemia, they produce a large number of abnormal white blood cells. These abnormal white blood cells do not function. And not only do they not function, but they inhibit the production of other kinds of blood cells. So here's a cartoon of nice healthy blood, and then here's a cartoon view of someone with leukemia. Lots and lots of abnormal white blood cells, fewer red blood cells and platelets. So someone with leukemia, one way they can be treated is through a bone marrow transplant. So they need to find a donor who has a very close genetic match for specific genes that lead to proteins, etc., found on the surface of cells. You need a close match because you obviously don't want the new immune system implanted in the person to attack their own cells. So someone with leukemia will first have their red bone marrow destroyed with anti-cancer drugs and radiation. Then red bone marrow is removed from a healthy donor, and then it is injected into some of the bones of the recipient, and then the hematopoietic cells will divide and replace the red bone marrow in the recipient, so they should then be able to produce all the blood cells that they need. And that is it for this part of chapter 12.